is not our destiny. Times change.
Howdy, Heroes Hearth. This is Kyle Fergusson from Into the Nexus podcast, and today we're going to talk about Garrosh. Now, you probably caught on at this point, I like doing kind of a concept plus a hero guide. This one is a little different. If you're a tank main in solo queue, or just in Storm League in general, you've kind of realized how small the pool is for picking a tank first. And your team likes to pick a tank first because there's so few that are so universal. And Garrosh has become one of these. So I don't only want to convince you to play Garrosh, I want to convince you that he's a dynamic and interesting tank. He's got a lot of different aspects to him, and it's not just the one trick on a pony. The engage and stun you've seen a billion times. As the game goes on, Garrosh develops. He transforms into a main tank, and when normally people would start figuring out your tricks along the way, you start getting new tricks along that path. But as we are a Blizzard game, I think a lot of our tank players come from World of Warcraft, and it's kind of a classy affair. We enjoy Johanna, who just brings the kitchen sink, but also grabs a lot of heroes at once, and lets our party decide who they're gonna kill, or they just target everything. ETC does the same thing, but he's a little better at making single picks, isolating single targets out. Certainly not an easy to play hero, but brings such a wealth of different types of CCs through his slide, through his face melt, through the mosh pit, that the enemy can't help but target him, making him very much a main tank. And then we have Garrosh, and they like to play like jerks, frankly, but really good jerks. And we need to get this into our roster. When you pick Garrosh for your team, you remove a huge chunk of the available tanks from the game. My favorite Garrosh counter here is Johanna. Fabulous with the Unstoppable, and a long-range blind that can allow her to dismount him. We can also use Face Melt to disengage him, stopping Garrosh from making the attack he wants to. But once Garrosh is picked up, we can basically remove Blaze from the possibilities. Garrosh creates a body block by placing Blaze on the other side of him. Diablo is extremely based on his positioning as to how he's going to get a stun. You ruin that positioning, either by moving an ally or moving Diablo, he's going to have a bad time. We have a bit of a light counter for things like Anubarak and Mal'Ganis, because you're forcing them to use their escape in a situation where that escape can also be an engage. For Anubarak, that's his burrow charge, immediately used to get out, and probably took a large chunk of damage doing so. And Mal'Ganis likely going to have to burn Carrion Swarm in order to get out of that situation. The tanks we're left with, and I'm not including Cho'Gall in this, even though he's labeled as a tank, are very, very unique. Arthas, Stitches, Muradin, Tyrael, labeled as a tank, all very unique heroes that aren't going to perform an easy job. The burden of execution is very high to tank with these heroes in our current game. Arthas or Muradin, perhaps the most dangerous ones here to throw into your backline, as they are capable of high amounts of disruption and damage. But you don't just wander into playing Garrosh blindly. There's a lot of philosophy and style to what he's doing, even though it may be rather rude to the enemy team. Here we have the level 1 hit points of all the tanks, labeled tanks, in the game. And Garrosh is sitting down here at 2,142 at level 1. Looking pretty darn small alongside his fellow tanks. Garrosh's health is so low because he has armor up as a trait. Garrosh gains 1 armor for every 2% of max health he's missing. What we're actually looking at with Garrosh is EHP, effective HP. And there's lots of fancy and complicated ways to think about this. But basically, the lower health Garrosh has, the more resistance he has to incoming damage. His armor is calculated after he receives the damage. So while I'd love to wow you with fancy math I found on Reddit, what's actually happening is that around a third health, particularly 34% health, Garrosh has maximum armor to his hit points. Garrosh is at his most tanky when he's at a third health. This is why Lucio is so effective at healing Garrosh, because he keeps him at a low health, while also providing movement speed and also being a bit of a jerk on the field as well. Rhaegar also provides a slow, and doesn't overheal the Garrosh. Ana is a unique situation because of the sleeps, allowing Garrosh to get a target and isolate them. But what we have is an environment where Garrosh wants to hover around a third health in order to be the most effective tank to mitigate incoming damage that he can. Alright, enough philosophy, let's talk about how to play Garrosh. When you get in range of an enemy, you will see this horde symbol. That is your wrecking ball. Throw an enemy hero, minion, or mercenary to the target location, dealing damage, and slowing them by 30% for 2.5 seconds. The range of wrecking ball matches the range of Groundbreaker. And this edge here, as it says outer edge, stuns for 0.5 seconds and slows for 40%. We don't mind overlapping a 30% slow with a 40% slow. It's a better slow. So your basic engage or disengage is going to be Wrecking Ball, Groundbreaker. We've now isolated out a target that our team can attack. If we wanted to disengage an enemy hero, we would do the same. E, and then Q. In the early game here, Warbreaker provides us with more damage, but also helps us get a reduced cooldown on Groundbreaker that we'll be using at 13 to stay alive. There is nothing wrong with Unrivaled Strength. In fact, if you pick this up, you will not ruin the range of your Wrecking Ball. Instead of throwing slightly on the inside, you'll now stun slightly on the outside. It's not going to be any different, and it doesn't make the basic combo any more difficult. Indomitable is where Garrosh gets a lot of his tank ability. In the early game, you're going to be making picks. You're going to upset the enemy team, and they should react to you, such as dismounting you when you move in for a kill, knocking you back, ruining your engagement. Indomitable, even if we're running in those big straight lines, allows us to be dismounted and still complete the walk to our enemy and deliver that enemy to our team. You're also a tank with low mobility, and while you have high survivability, you still need to anchor for your allies, and Indomitable allows you to walk out of situations that otherwise would have been a kill for the enemy team. Into the Fray has been the top pick here for so long. It's a light cleanse. While in flight, allied heroes are unstoppable. Not only that, but you grant them 25 armor to get their business done with and deal damage where they impact. Into the Fray makes you such a dynamic tank, and it's really fun to use. It's a lot of fun manhandling your team and getting them to go where you want, such as, go do a siege camp for me, if you could please. Taunt Warlord's Challenge completes the package for our big engage. We now have a way to isolate a hero, reach them while unstoppable, after being mounted, throw them, reposition them, stun them, and land a 2-second taunt, silencing them and forcing them to attack Garrosh. This adds up to a full 3-second CC chain coming from a single hero. And while they're stunned, we complete the kill by walking over and landing that taunt. You can get a little fancy with this. You could throw a shorter amount and land that taunt quicker. You could taunt them while they're in midair, so wherever they land, they end up taunted. But your primary engage up until 10 is going to involve isolating out a hero, throwing them back, repositioning yourself, and hitting that taunt R. As level 13 approaches, the enemy is likely become knowledgeable of your tricks, and you're probably receiving a lot of dismounts and poke damage. Defensive measures allows you to gain a shield for yourself. Remember how we talked about healing isn't that effective into Garrosh because if we increase his max health, he loses armor. He wants to hover around that 1/3 mark to have maximum EHP effective hit points. Garrosh can provide his own shields for 6 seconds. We can now transform Garrosh from this early game pick hero into something more defensive for their team, something more about his own survivability. In this case, we can imagine this is ETC, and we want to disengage him and receive that shield. Now with mounting, creative hiding, and unstoppable, we should be able to get the majority of the heroes we're interested in grabbing. The main counterplay to Garrosh and stopping him from throwing exactly what he wants is to hide inside of minions, where you can see my little horde symbol bouncing all over the place as I try to navigate and find Johanna here. It is also a misconception that you will waste your throw if the enemy is unstoppable. This is not Lily. My buttons do not gray out on unstoppable characters. We cannot throw unstoppable characters. Now if we add minions to this mix, and Johanna is unstoppable, then I will accidentally throw a minion instead. Now in order to give you an idea of the Garrosh playstyle with as little noise as possible, let's say I'm not particularly fond of this back archer minion here. I am mounted in a bush. I run out, and I grab my target and slam him. After completing that, I loop around and get ready to do it again. This is why those stacking talents are so important, particularly that unstoppable, as people start to learn our playstyle. Because we're gonna go and do it again. Get another hero, get another pick, and get another stack for our level 1 talent. Now I encourage you to go check out my most dangerous bushes and HOTS video in order to find out some of these locations that Garrosh will like to hide out in. Now when it comes to Garrosh Maps, you can take him anywhere you darn want. 2-lane maps do have more effectiveness because we're going to be with the 4-man, helping to get picks quickly because we have the backup of damage. We also get a lot of stacks, which will help us empower ourselves on our way to 13. Brax's Holdout is a particularly interesting case because the towers are so close to the lane. We don't need extremely powerful damage dealers or even good damage dealers when we can get the enemy in tower range to help kill them. And I really like Tomb of the Spider Queen because if you kill someone with gems on them, isolated in your backline, those gems are gone and the map can start to snowball. I would encourage you to avoid the wide maps, the big open spaces, where you'll have trouble getting to access the enemy team without running continually across an open field. Alterac Pass certainly has these, though you can get cute in those bushes around the objective. Hanamura is a fine win rate map for Garrosh because of the 4-man lane on a 2-lane map. But when it comes to objective fights in the late game, you're going to need to be comfortable with Garrosh to actually succeed in completing those picks you're going to create. And of course, no drafting guide video would be complete without talking about counters you need to look out for. Because you are hovering around a third health, you are weak to % base damage because your health is based on armor. You also reposition heroes, and if the hero can escape, they might be pretty good against you. Malthael Last Rites allows you to delete a Garrosh when he's in his most comfortable tanking zone. Malthael also features things like Fear the Reaper, allowing him to recover from a throw you may have put on him, and his basic kit involves Wraith Strike, which allows him to teleport back through Garrosh, as long as he managed to get a mark on him. Leoric brings Unstoppable with his Wraith Walk, as well as some movement speed tied to it. He also, of course, has Drain Hope, which can do massive damage to Garrosh. If you land a Drain Hope into Garrosh, it's not a bad idea to just hang out in Wraith Walk to be unstoppable during it, while he flounders in the in-between time, unable to isolate or throw you. And while we're talking about % damage, a little note on Tychus. His range is really close to the Groundbreaker range. He's in a lot of danger versus Garrosh. Bigger they are can help whittle down the Garrosh fast, but that just puts him in the 3rd health % that he wants to be at in the first place. Tychus can be a bit of a liability in these cases. Odin can help you dodge a dangerous moment along with your run and gun to make sure you can keep Garrosh at a safe distance. Most Tychus players aren't practiced enough in this matchup to actually pull it off well. Because Garrosh wants to be mounted, make his way to the enemy he wants to isolate, and then throw them backwards, Poke can be very effective in stopping Garrosh in his tracks. When we think of Poke right now, we think of characters like Hanzo, Li Ming, Lunara, and Chromie. But because they're so squishy, this leaves a very open front line, and Garrosh as the game goes on will just isolate the tank out, or whoever the bruiser might happen to be, or even the support. The Poke characters that are actually winning versus Garrosh are things like Orphea, Raynor, and Junkrat, able to reposition themselves, reposition Garrosh, or do a full interrupt like Raynor's capable of with his penetrating round. Also, the Giant Killer helps out quite a bit there too. I feel like on paper, Jaina is the perfect Garrosh poke counter, what with the slow and the high burst damage. Most Jainas are not at all comfortable in this matchup. They don't have Ice Block till much later, around that 13 when Garrosh is starting to change his tactics. And most are frankly Blizzard machines, who are more comfortable hitting multiple heroes, clearing lanes, than playing any sort of counterplay style. And instead of just listing giant killers here, I would encourage you to be more creative than that. Think of characters like Zool, with a blue build, who might be thrown to the backline and just kill the entire backline. Yrel has an amazing level 16 talent that not only does percent base damage, but lowers armor. When we get into lowering armor on the enemy target, Garrosh's effective HP is gone. He's just a squishy tank, with nothing left to help him survive. Want to avoid being thrown? With Deathwing. Deathwing can't be targeted by Garrosh's nonsense. A skilled Medivh could help an ally escape, all the while poking Garrosh down with repeat spell damage. And if you do find yourself with a pokey team with a Hanzo and Li Ming or the like, Kairazim is able to circumnavigate that battlefield, use both the tank and the distant back line in order to get in neat positions, recover his position, and of course you have 7-sided strike with it as well. If you've been on the fence about learning Garrosh, I hope this video has helped sell you on just how dynamic and interesting of a character he can be. He's not a one-trick pony, and if you perform that one trick over and over again, the enemy team's gonna figure it out. It's about getting an early level lead, getting those early picks, and then transitioning into a tank that makes dynamic peels for their team. Given the state of tanks right now, we all need to invest in Garrosh and learn how to deal with him in creative ways. I was Kyle Fergusson. Thank you for watching this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, and ring that bell on your way out here at Heroes Hearth. I'll see you next week with more Learn to Play content for Heroes of the Storm.